Hello, this is my historical figure speech, and today I'll be talking about who I believe is the most influential and inspiring president who made the most change and got the United States through perhaps the toughest time it had ever seen in its years of running. And this president is none other than Franklin D. Roosevelt, or Franklin Delrose Roosevelt. He was one of the first who had instituted major regulation reforms related to finance, which meant that he gave banks, I believe it was Sunday or some day during the weekend, to catch up on everything so that there wouldn't be another crash when it came to people using the bank. He added reforms and regulations to communications and labor. He also presided over the end of prohibition in the United States. And he was one of the very few to begin using a radio to speak directly to the American people. He also gave 30 fireside chats during radio addresses during his presidency, and becoming the first president to be televised on television. And alongside some of the other more dire achievements that he got people through was the Great Depression. He was the president who actually got the United States out of the economic recession. And he's also the president who got us through the Second World War, when our involvement started in 1941. It was unfortunate in his third term, actually, because during times of war he was granted another pass for his election, and it was unfortunate to see that he actually passes away in 1945, allowing Truman, the vice president at the time, his cabinet, to take over. What I truly like most about this historical figure is because of his relation to the American people and his absolute bravery to not be seen as weak when he was crippled by polio, I believe in the beginning of his third term. Most world leaders would try to discreetly hide any of their weaknesses so they wouldn't appear as weak by other nations, but he was one of the first to present his legs while he was in a wheelchair. But before then, while he was still hiding them, his legs were severely weakened, and he was escorted up, and he propelled himself up. He holds himself up he holds onto the podium firmly to support his whole body while giving a speech that lasted 5 to 10 minutes, and after which he would be escorted off the stage, which I find truly miraculous and commendable. One of the key points on how Franklin D. Roosevelt got the United States out of the Great Depression was by what he referred to as the 3 R's, which were relief for the unemployed and poor, recovery of the economic back to normal levels, and reform of the financial system to prevent a repeat depression. And that reform, as I aforementioned, was to give banks a much-needed break once per week. And while the nation was under FDR, the American federal government assumed new and powerful roles in the nation's economy and its corporate life, and in health, welfare, and the well-being of its citizens. FDR also succeeded the incomplete promises we made to the world, specifically with the League of Nations, started by Woodrow Wilson following after the First World War, and with the formation of the United Nations, which actually dealt with global crises that the League of Nations couldn't have, which gave rise to fascists such as Hitler, and allowed for other dictators to abuse their powers without prohibiting regulations, because the United States would be the driving force to make those motivated regulations. But without the United States involvement, because it became isolationists after the First World War, that couldn't be. So with the United Nations then created, we then joined it finally, and were able to create things such as Interpol and other global organizations and services that improve upon the international crises that face other nations. As a wrap, I'd like to thank you for attending this speech, talking about who I believe is the most significant historical figure to me. And in this video, we covered why I believe that they are one of the greatest to me personally, the impact they had on the United States and the world as a whole, and their commendable attributes and their morality. All right, and thank you for your time.